that they should give to themselves another mark.
The earth has the mark of the beast.
A sign or a mark, that they should give to themselves a mark.
The earth has the mark of the beast.
What's the mark of the beast? Yeah, that's the question. Most are trying to answer, but many are guessing. The mark symbolizes who you belong to, whether the adversary or the one who's true. We're told to obey, so scriptures say the seventh day to worship, but you go on the first. This appears minuscule, but it's only the beginning to how matters became worse. Parents, full-faced lie to their children about a fat man with gifts, knees and chimneys and buildings. It's supposedly the Savior's birthday. We look through the scriptures to celebrate it, this in no way. Fact, it was observed before his existence. Midwinter feast, Saturnalia, for instance. These times are home to Greece and Rome. Primitive cycle of sun, worship presently belong to.
Worship on Sunday is in no way the way to salvation. Religious holidays come from evil ways. All the earth has the mark of the beast.
The earth has the mark of the beast.
Easter fanatics supposedly celebrate the Savior's resurrection with colored eggs and bunny rabbits. No true relation to the real Savior. Yet another tradition common to pagan behavior. God's mother mourns over dead God's son. Searches for him, his return meant food, fertility for everyone. Isis and Osiris among the most popular ones. New Year's Day, what can I say? Just another way to keep the masses blinded. These truth they sought, you will find it. They promised all the time Janus, two-faced God, one old, one young, isn't it hard? The use of an old man and a baby, cleverly crafted, cleverly done. History of all these days derived from the ways of the original pagan.
Worship on Sunday is in no way the way to salvation. Religious holidays come from evil ways. All the earth has the mark of the beast.
Sabbath Shalom, everyone. I'm a daughter, Yisrael Abel Hawkins, and I want to serve you as a priestess starting very soon. Please start from your seats in Sabbath services. Shalom, everyone. I am a daughter of Yisrael Abel Hawkins, and I'd like to serve as a priestess starting very soon. Welcome to another exciting service. Please get your pens and paper ready to take notes. Please welcome our first speaker. Sabbath Shalom. The theme for today's presentation is what it means to be the Yahweh family. In Colossians 3:13-15, it says, being patient with one another and forgiving one another if anyone has complained against each other, Just as the Messiah forgave you, you also must forgive. And above all these things, put love, which is the bond of perfection. And let the peace of Yahweh rule in your hearts, to which you also were called into one body, and be thankful. And please stand and welcome our first speaker. Praise Yahweh. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You can be seated. The peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech is Things You Can Do in Order to Qualify to be Part of Yahweh's Family. Point number 1. Keep the Sabbath as Yahweh keeps the Sabbath. The 5th book of Israel, chapter 17, verse 10. You know yourself that mankind has shunned everything that Yahweh has given him to keep him safe. You can see that. They reject the Sabbath day, which is a plain law that anyone can see. The law says to be sure to keep the Sabbath. It is the 7th day of the week, and this shows Yahweh that you belong to him. Point number 2. Pay your tithes and offerings to the house of Yahweh. Positive law number 127. The first tithe, the first tenth of all our increase, must be given to the house of Yahweh for the work of Yahweh. Please read Leviticus 27, verse 30, Deuteronomy 14, verse 22, and Deuteronomy 12, verse 6. Positive law number 128. The second tithe, the second tenth, must be set aside for the feast of Yahweh. Please read Deuteronomy 14, 23 through 26. Positive law number 130. The third tithe, the third tenth, must be set aside for the poor in the 3rd and 6th years of the 7-year cycle for the poor to come to the feast. Please read Deuteronomy 14, 28 through 29. Point number 3. Wash one another's feet as a symbol of voluntary servitude to your brother or sister. Yochanan 13, 12 through 17. After he had washed their feet, he put his tallit back on and sat down again. Then he said to them, Do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and leader, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Since I then, your leader and teacher, have washed your feet, you are also bound in obligation to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you do as I have done for you. Truly, truly, I say to you, the servant is not greater than his ruler, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you do understand these things, joyful are you when you do them. Point number 4. Study to show yourself approved. 2 Timothy 2, verse 15. Study to show yourself approved to Yahweh, a workman who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, the law and the prophets. The first book of Israel, chapter 23, verse 49, Pastor tells us, the word study means intense submission of the mind, submission of the heart. It means so many things. Now, if it was just read, it wouldn't contain this. But the Hebrew word for study and the references that go with it show that when Yahweh said study to show yourself approved, it meant all of these things. It referred back to the law, studying under the priest, submitting to becoming a part of the body. The Apostle Shaul said, you won't make it unless you become a part of the body and consider the body. Point number 5, obeying the one sent and the body of priests. Positive law number 172. Listen to and obey Yahweh's anointed servant, the overseer of the house of Yahweh. Please read Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. The 7th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 16, verse 101, Pastor tells us, number 1, go to the priest. That is where you get your information. Number 2, do what he says. If you don't obey the priest, brethren, you're practicing evil. You are practicing breaking Yahweh's laws. It is that simple. Yahweh bless your understanding, and I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You can be seated. The title of my speech is, Who are Yahweh's True People? Pastor has told us, start building your mind. Don't destroy it with the world, but build your mind from the knowledge of Yahweh's laws. I have 2 houses. One is Satan's house, and the other is Yahweh's. Notice, Satan's house is a nice-looking crocheted home. while Yahweh's house is simply made of paper. There are three people walking on a narrow road. They come to two houses. They have a choice to make. Which house will they choose? The first person looks at Satan's house. The first person looks at Satan's house and says, wow, this house looks really great. This house looks really pretty. She goes inside. Once inside, she says, I don't really like how they are teaching. It seems harmful and not the right thing to do. So she walks out and goes to Yahweh's house. She doesn't like the outside as much as Yahweh's, but she loves how they are teaching and feels great about herself. The second person comes. She looks at Yahweh's house and says, what? This house don't look strong enough to protect me. She looks at Satan's house and really likes the outside. She goes inside. She learns that she can do whatever she wants. She loves it. The third and last person comes. He likes both houses. He goes to Satan's house first and says, actually, I like this one. Then he sees everyone else going into Yahweh's house. So he changes his mind and goes to Yahweh's house too. Of those three people, who is Yahweh's? The first person didn't decide based on what she liked to do or how it looked, but on what they taught inside. The second person didn't care about anything. She wanted to have her own way and do what she wanted to do, and picked by looks, not by what they taught inside. The last person decided based on what everyone else was doing. Behind the scenes, he was doing the very thing Yahweh said not to do. Please turn to Matthew 23, verse 26. And for your notes, you can also read Matthew 15:11, and y'all can on Mark 7:15. And it says, in Matthew 23:26 says, you blind Pharisees, first cleanse the inside of the cup and plate, so that the outside of them may be clean also. Just as the phrase goes, don't judge a book by its cover, it's saying don't judge by how the house looks, but by what they teach. Who are Yahweh's people? They are the broken who have been made whole. They reject the world's way of judging and surrender to Father Yahweh and let Him lead. Live bold and confident, knowing who we are, the true people, the chosen children, and the eternal family of Yahweh. And I have one question. And you see the boys thinking, the question is, are you Yahweh's true people? And with that, can I please stand and I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Praise Yahweh for those speeches. In the 12th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 17, verse 15 through 16, Pastor says, what did Yeshua say? Who is my mother and father? Who is my family? Praise Yahweh. When Yahweh calls you here, I welcome you home because this is your family. You become a part of this family of Yahweh. And Yeshua says to the family, go and preach the kingdom of Yahweh. Be part of it. Any part will be worth getting into that kingdom and being a part of it. Praise Yahweh. I'll clean your commodes throughout all eternity if Yahweh tells me that's my job, and I'll praise Yahweh for it. Praise Yahweh. Now I'd like to turn the program over to announcements. Praise Yahweh. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please be seated for a few announcements. Shabbat Shalom Women's Choir. We will be having rehearsal today after services in Meeting Room 1 at 12 o'clock. Look forward to seeing you there. Shalom Righteous Daughters of Yahweh of all ages. The PSCEP Teachers of Peace training class will be held in Meeting Room 6 today from 3 o'clock to 3:45 p.m. Please bring your character unit's teacher's manual. We look forward to seeing you there. The Women's Fan of the Flame study class will be held this evening from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. in Meeting Room 4. All women and girls are welcome to come. Please bring your 10 Commandments booklet, Book of Yahweh, notebook, and something to write with. Hope to see you there. Women's evening lamplight class is postponed until after the Feast of Tabernacles due to feast preparations. If you are not already doing something, please ask how you can get involved. Shalom Peaceful Scene One-Day Event Choir members. Practice for One-Day Event Choir will begin today from 5:15 to 6 o'clock p.m. in Meeting Room 1. We look forward to seeing you there. Praise Yahweh. Enjoy your takeout dinner today at the Lamplight Cafeteria. For dinner, we'll be serving oki roast beef. For desserts, we have cake, cookies, and ice cream. Abel's Kitchen will be serving knockwurst. The cafeteria will close today at 5:30 p.m. And that's all for the announcements. Please stand as I turn over to the great priest in the house of Yahweh.
Please raise your hands for opening prayer. Heavenly Father, Yahweh, servant and condition, come through the body cons, past seconds, our most unplanned Messiah. We'd like to start with this prayer to you, Father, asking you to please pour out the spiritual food to us today, that the lips of the speakers will speak what you need them to, that knowledge will go throughout our lives, and we'll use it in our workplaces and so on. And please bless kind whom leaves prison or suffering the prisons at this time. And please heal all those who are sick and afflicted that cannot make it here today. And please open up the gates that the beast system has closed on the people that cannot make it here in the other countries, and they will be able to come and learn and rejoice with us very soon. And please give us the power to resurrect the dead very soon, Father, also. Access things by icons, pashang, our most beloved Shum say. Hallelujah, praise Yahweh.
Father Yahweh, this is Conchmail Hawkins, along with these, your sons and daughters, seeking permission to come before you in unity with the righteous Kahans of the house of Yahweh, seed of the witness Israel, and through Yeshua, most honorable and honorable high priest and king. Father, we do thank you for another Sabbath day, another day of delight, another day, Father, that we can grow closer and closer to you. And we thank you, Father, for the hope that you've placed within us, and most of all for the preparation time that you've given to us, because there is, it requires great preparation to follow that hope. And Father, the way that hope is, we don't hope that your prophecies are going to be fulfilled. We know that. It's in writing. It's been a judgment all along. The hope that we have, Father, is that you continue to work with each and every one of us, and that we qualify to fulfill those offices that Yeshua is establishing for each and every one of us. We do hope, Father, that we do spend the time to prepare our own selves from the innermost parts all the way, so that everyone can see that preparation, see that righteousness that we live and breathe. You've taught us, Father, through the one sent for a long time. And I pray that all of that is, we know it's within us, and I pray, Father, that we continue to be inspired to reveal it to all, because it's by that love that we have for one another that everyone will know who we belong to. Continue to be with us, Father, in all ways, through Yeshua, our most honorable and honorable high priest and king, and as a seed of the witness Israel. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. And it's my great honor and privilege to turn the services over to the daughters of Yahweh.
Please be seated. The peace of Yahweh be with all of us here, as well as all of you who are joining us through the media. For this session, our women will be presenting their messages on the theme, what it means to be the Yahweh family. Some time ago, our overseer told us about someone who called him and said, I've been listening to your sermons now for several months, and I've never heard you preach the same thing twice. And overseer said, well, I do, but I just bring it in different ways. And that's exactly what his seed will be doing today. This team of teachers will be bringing you messages on this one topic, but in different ways. So let's now prepare our hearts and minds to receive the diversity on this one topic, what it means to be the Yahweh family. Please stand. And let's welcome our first speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, please be seated. The title of my speech this morning is, Can the Body Spare a Part? Tonsils, the appendix, wisdom teeth. What do these three have in common? Well, they are all generally seen as unnecessary and or useless parts of the body. Their purpose is hardly known, and the body seems to function just fine without them. But did you know that all three of these parts actually have a very important role? According to clevelandclinic.org, your tonsils are actually part of your immune system. Their main role is to fight infection that by catching the germs that enter in your body through your nose and your mouth. And they have a lot of white blood cells which help them to kill the germs. However, ironically, they end up becoming infected themselves pretty often. The appendix is a storehouse for healthy and great bacteria in your gut, and that helps the digestion run smoothly. It also plays a role in the immune system because it has a lot of lymphoid cells, and those are just the main cells that are in your immune system. However, it also commonly becomes infected, just like the tonsils. And lastly, wisdom teeth. They have support for the back of your mouth. They support the back of your mouth, and they preserve bone in your jaw. And they also are robust and have a long lifespan, and they're stronger than all the other teeth in your mouth, which makes them a solid backup in case your other teeth become damaged. Most people's don't grow properly, though, and they end up, for others, they stay under the gums. So it can become more of a problem than a benefit. However, all three of these parts, they all have a specific, significant function. Even though they're small, they still have an important part to play. They work with the rest of the body. They are a part of the body just as much as any other organ that might get more attention. But doctors will still want to remove them before they even show signs of trouble at all sometimes, especially wisdom teeth, simply because they are prone to causing certain issues. And then the doctors will say, well, it's fine, you don't really need them. Your body has other ways of doing those same jobs. And I'm here to tell you that sometimes we can have the same mindset towards people. Specifically, the people Yahweh has brought to his house and is making into his family. Yahweh has called many different people. And anyone from that calling that chooses to uphold, agree with, and obey the rules of this household, aka his laws, they are a part of this family. And sometimes we might deem another family member as being unnecessary or useless or simply having lesser value. There's people that we're more comfortable with, people that are easier to work with. We know exactly what their role is, what they're contributing to the family, and that's all great, that's all fine and dandy. And then there's other people that require a little bit more patience than we might be used to giving. There's people that they communicate differently. They might be very young in the faith. They might face challenges like hearing loss or loss of mobility or anything other physical disabilities, mental disabilities even. And we might, because of those things, begin to see them as being prone to causing issues. We might think of them as being difficult to be around or think they're going to slow us down. And then we think to ourselves, it's fine, we don't really need them. There's other more capable people. There's other ways we can get this job done. And you know what? Possibly there is. Possibly you can do just fine without them. But you could be doing even better if you used all of the members in the family. If we recognize that every person, just like every part of the body, has a specific, special, unique, important role to play. Someone that you might see as a weaker vessel could be strong in an area where you yourself are weak. And that goes for the younger ones, the quieter ones, the slower ones. They still have a part to contribute to the family, to share the responsibility of being in a family so it doesn't all fall on one person. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. If you want to turn there, it's on page 896. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 18, says, "But now Yahweh has set the members, each one of them in the body, as it has pleased him." Verse 21, "And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor yet the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, instead, those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor, and our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, which our more presentable parts do not require. But Yahweh has joined together the body, having given greater honor to that part which lacked. True family members support and encourage one another. They shine a light on the ones who might feel small and invisible. They look beyond each other's weaknesses, finding their strengths and seeing how it can benefit every family member. In Romans chapter 15, verse 1 through 2, it says, "We then who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak, not to please ourselves. Let each one of us please his brothers for righteousness to the building of the house of Yahweh." So, can the body spare a part? Well, it can compensate for missing a part, but Yahweh never designed it to be without all of its parts. So in closing, we are all equal parts of a whole, meaning we all have a necessary role. And just because you don't know what someone else's role is, doesn't mean they are less valuable. Yahweh purposefully placed each person in this family, just like he purposefully placed every part of the body. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 16 says, "From whom the whole body, being fitly joined and brought together by that which every joint supplies, according to the effective working in the measure of every part, causes growth of the body itself for the building of the house of Yahweh in love." So let us encourage one another, show the same care and appreciation for every member of this family, leaving no spare parts behind. Please welcome the next speaker.
Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. You can be seated. It's definitely a privilege and honor to be standing before the called out ones today. The title of my speech is, Am I Lacking? Now, when we think about the term healthy family, which we're all striving to become, a lot of components can come up. Joy, companionship, quality time, care. But what word really comes or springs to your mind? 4 letters, love. But it's not the world's love, right? The disarming, I love you, that can come right after a fight, or the huge bear hug that comes from a close one, even though they're praying for your demise. Oh, this one is big. Y'all know about the love bombing, right? Let me shower you in so much gifts and grand gestures to the point where we forget all about the hurtful deeds. Satan has once again polluted Yahweh's original way, corrupting love to the point where some might say they don't believe in it, or it does not exist. Today, I want to either remind or redefine what love truly is. A kashak love, what we know as ahab. Yes, you heard me. To be a part of Yahweh's family, we must exhibit ahab. Now, I don't use the word exhibit lightly. It's not to put on a show. Now, from Merriam-Webster, I'm going to look at the second definition here. It says to present, to view, to show, or display something outwardly, especially by visible signs or action. Now, I like this definition because I've always felt a little weird, or should I say had major red flags, when someone goes to the phrase, I love you, or you know I love you, like over and over repeatedly, almost like a broken record. It's just because I have some trust issues, I probably think. But rule number 1 is I love you in most cases doesn't even always need to be said. It should be felt in your actions and attitudes, okay? Let me say that again. I love you in most cases doesn't even need to always be said if your actions and attitudes screams it. Now, wait a minute. On a flip side, for those men who hasn't mumbled these words in the last decade, we don't know it's okay to say, right? Sometimes it's necessary for someone to hear it. So as you can see, there's a balance to it all. Now let's look at our perfect example, Yeshua Messiah, who left us a commandment on love. And this is found in Yochanan 13, verses 34 through 35. And it says, I give a new commandment to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. Do y'all see that he wasn't afraid to say it or to write it? Okay? So you always love one another. By this we'll all know that you are my disciples, by the love that you show for one another. And I want us to think not only disciples, but the seed of Israel Hawkins, we show our love. To be a part of Yahweh's family, that love has to be exhibited. Now, let me make sure I'm not moving too quickly here. Okay, so it's a qualifying attribute that we have to develop. Now I want to zero in on the wording there, by this we'll all know, which is who is that all that we're speaking about. Now on the first definition for exhibit, from Merriam-Webster again, it means to submit to a court or officer in course of proceeding. Now, House of Yahweh, do you think we're on trial on the sea glass? Is someone looking for our level of love? Now, as a start, I think it does begin with ourselves. So I want us to all take the time right now and ask yourself, does my love for my brothers and sisters, for the family of Yahweh shine forth? Can they see it? And as you're thinking about that, I want to rewind back to the year 1991. I wasn't alive then, but I was able to hear this sermon later, and it really stuck out to me, okay? Now, this is the second book of Israel, chapter 1, verse 23 through 25. And it says here, now he mentions the word love, verse 46. For if you love those who love you, or love only those who love you, what reward do you have? Do you even the publicans do the same? Yes, you have to become higher than they are. Your righteousness actually has to exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. He says they love their own. Even the Christians love their own to some extent. Even they don't know what true love is, yet they still love as far as they know it. Even the Jews in Israel do that today. They love their own. Something else they do that I find lacking here, but we intend to cover, is they stand strong for their own. They stand in unity for their own. Whatever party they belong to, they will stand for that party. Now, this is the clincher right here. Verse 25. We have to develop that, brethren, in the house of Yahweh, because we are lacking it. And many people in the house of Yahweh are lacking in that. You need to be so closely knit, brethren and sisterin, that no one could come between you and the person that you consider to be the lowest in the house of Yahweh. Now, at this point, we shouldn't be looking at anybody to be the lowest in the house of Yahweh. If anything, we should be striving to be the lowest in the house of Yahweh, because we understand that what we look at as the greatest in the kingdom. Okay, so, house of Yahweh. Have we risen to that level that Pastor said that we need to reach? Today, I want to go over some pointers for us to compare ourselves with and make sure that we're still not found lacking. So, rule number 1 is love has to be shown, which brings me to rule number 2. Love is not surface, it is sincere. We all know we can do something with a smile on our face and not actually want to do it or mean it at all. Understand that Yahweh does not look at our actions, but he tests the heart. He looks for the genuine effort we are putting in and our true intent. In the same way, those that we interact with can also see our sincerity, even behind a smile. Which brings me to rule number 3. Love should never be weaponized. Many people like to use love as an excuse to bring harm, to control, and in some cases as transactional. Just like I mentioned, let me show you love so that you forget all that I did before, right? Now, I want us to turn to 1 Corinthians 13, which we know as the Ahab chapter, because they set it straight in here. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4. It says, love is patient and is kind. Love is not jealous. Love is not boastful, is not puffed up with pride. And I know we can get to the point where we speed read this, but I really want us to comprehend what it's saying. In the same way that Yahweh does not dwell where there is sin, love cannot dwell when any of these attributes are present. So if we're prideful with our sisters, we're not showing her love. If we put her down, we're not showing her love. And in verse 5 it says, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own advantage, is not provoked, become worked up in irritation, and thinks no evil. Now I want us to cross-reference there Romans 13, verse 10, because it tells us that love does not cause harm to our neighbor, and it says, continue this by keeping the laws of Yahweh, because we know that true love is the keeping of Yahweh's laws. Now, I want you to look at verse 13 of 1 Corinthians 13. It says, but now these 3 things endure, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So this is going to bring me to rule number 4. If love can be weaponized, but we don't want to, right? And if love is greater than all of these 3, then do you believe that love is powerful? And I'm really asking y'all that. Do y'all believe that love is powerful? There we go. Okay, so rule number 4. Love is powerful and it can be felt. So, do we realize that love is one of the highest level of frequencies in relation to our emotions? And I know we've seen this chart before, but I want to bring it to your reminder, this diagram, of where we fall, where love falls on our emotions. So, love is over here, and it's like the breaking phone. It says here that it defies or dissolves negativity, and in a way it dissolves sin. Now, I truly believe that a part of leveling up and opening our subconscious mind is depending on us having complete control over our emotions, just like Yeshua Messiah did, and constantly living in that high frequency. So we do end up, being sad, being hurt. Make sure that we try our very best to level up. Now, we know as human beings, we were created with an electric magnetic field surrounding us, right? That not only connects us with others, but with creation, with the actual earth, and with heaven itself. So it's not even a matter of just showing love, but rather, is the recipient, is your brother and sister feeling it? I mean heart to heart, on an electric magnetic level. It kind of gives me goosebumps, but bear with me. When I think of frequencies and our energy, it reminds me of the 2 parallels that we know. The kingdom of Yahweh is running side by side the kingdom of Satan and the gods. And we understand that in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, that the coming of Yeshua Messiah is dependent upon the energy of Satan. But have we ever thought that there is a level of energy that we must broadcast and signal out to the throne of heaven? Now, Yeshua Messiah is literally waiting to feel the unity and the love of this body into the heavens. And sometimes I need to paint a picture, so I'll be thinking about it sometimes. I'm like, okay, Pastor always says we're 99.9% there. Something in heaven and earth is like, wait, and the churn is on, 99.9% there. But if Yahweh is in the throne room, right, and we have Yeshua Messiah beside him, and we get to 100% to where it reaches the heavens completely, I can see Yeshua looking at Yahweh like, did you feel that? Like, he just sensed up, did you feel that? And Yahweh's like, they ready. And then he comes down. So I feel like we need to get to that level so I can figure out what the real conversation is, among other things. Okay, there's so much more to look forward to. So, saints of Yahweh, in a nutshell, what does it mean to be a part of the family of Yahweh? It means that we not only know what love is, but that we exhibit it. It means that the 7th work, the Philadelphia group of brotherly and sisterly love, goes beyond righteousness and display a level of true ahab. So ask yourself, am I adhering to the 4 rules that we covered today? And if not, is love lacking from me? Please stand and welcome the next speaker.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. The title of my speech is Yahweh chose us out of billions of people to be in his priestly family. Are we choosing Yahweh over all else? In the 2nd book of Israel, chapter 1, verse 20 and 21, it says, "The very highest being in the universe has written you a letter, inviting you to be part of his staff. Brethren, that's an honor to me. I know that the highest being in the universe is testing me to see if I can qualify for a position. Not only is he testing me, he's guarding my every move. He's telling me everything I need to do so I won't slip up and make a mistake, so I can become worthy. How can you get an offer above that? That's what's being offered to each and every one of you here today, if you will come to perfection. The word offer generally means presenting something like a service, a product, or a proposal for someone else to accept or reject. So we see there's no force, but an offer, an invitation. Yahweh wants to give us great authority and positions in his eternal family, but we have to accept that offer. And we have to choose to do what is required of us, and that is to live according to Yahweh's laws. He doesn't force anyone to keep his laws. He warns of the consequences that would come if we don't. He has allowed mankind to go their own way in order to teach a very valuable lesson of the results of sin. That's the reason for all the sickness and suffering and diseases that we see today. In Genesis 2:16, it says, "But of the tree of the knowledge of righteousness and evil you must not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die." And Pastor has taught us that it's not an instant death, that this begins the dying process. It's dying, you will die. It starts to break the body down with the sicknesses and the diseases and the confusion of the mind. Yahweh says to the Laodiceans in Revelation 3:16, "So then, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spew you out of my mouth." If I can have my audio clip, please.
Now, you would think this is writing to a city or a group that's in a town called Laodicea. It's not a place, but it's a condition of mind or a character that he's trying to get changed in a group of people that's in the house of Yahweh, but they're listening to a bunch of stupid rumors from people who were probably sent by the Catholic Church to try to get them to change their mind about keeping this shadow of protection that Yahweh gives us here.
So we see this lukewarm is that mixture of righteousness and evil, that doubt and unbelief that could be in our minds. We can't sneak into the marriage supper pretending to be righteous, but having that condition of the mind, like Pastor had said. Remember, Yahweh is not going to allow sin in his eternal priestly family. So to avoid being among that lukewarm category, we can strive to imitate the character of Yahweh, Yeshua, and Pastor Yisrael Hawkins. Yahweh tested and proved his laws to see that they are the only way to have peace, health, and eternal life. Even if one law is broken, this causes a contamination and a ripple effect. If we want to be a part of Yahweh's family forever, we need to choose to be obedient to him and his house. In the book, The Lost Faith of the Apostles and Prophets, chapter 6, verse 122, found on page 122, it says, "From the teachings of Yeshua, we see that in order to enter into the kingdom of Yahweh, we must be willing to totally submit in obedience to Yahweh. We must be loyal servants to Yahweh and love Yahweh more than anyone or anything on this earth. We must be willing to live by every word of Yahweh." Again, we see that there is no force. Yahweh doesn't rule by force. That's the way of the gods. In Matthew 22:14, it says, "Many are called, but few are chosen." The reason that few are chosen is because many don't choose Yahweh. And because of that, then Yahweh can't choose us for his family if we refuse. So how do we choose Yahweh? Not just by saying it. We choose Yahweh by our everyday actions and decisions, being present on the Sabbath and feast days, and practicing what we're learning from Yahweh's house. Deuteronomy 30:19 says, "I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you this day. I have set before you life." The side note tells us that life is Yahweh's laws. "Life and death, blessings and curses, because you are free to make your own choice between righteousness and evil. Therefore, choose life so that you and your children can live." In the 12th book of Israel, part 1, chapter 20, verse 10, it says, "In the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth that govern the earth, the sun, the moon, and so forth, of that part of governing the earth for mankind. For mankind, it means for the purpose of building a Yahweh family from mankind. The sons of man, that's his plan to build that family." This plan was with Yahweh from the beginning, as Yachanan 1:1 tells us. Yahweh created the earth and everything on it for us. So why didn't Yahweh just create us already perfect with no desire to sin? He wants a family in his image, and Yahweh chooses to keep his laws. When we consistently practice Yahweh's laws, every day we are actually being changed from those carnal beings to having that character of Yahweh. Yes, it does take time and consistency, but we are being made in his image when we do this. If one stops practicing righteousness and turns to God worship, they are taking on the character of the gods. Yahweh has already shown us that the house of Yahweh will prevail, and Satan and her family will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. In the 15th book of Israel, chapter 35, verse 38, it says, "Sin is the breaking of Yahweh's laws. He who practices sin is of the devil. They belong to the devil. They don't belong to Yahweh. He who practices keeping the laws is righteous." This is what sets Yahweh's people apart from Satan's people. The only group of people on earth who practice Yahweh's laws is the house of Yahweh. In 2 Timothy 2:12, it tells us, "If we endure, we will also reign with him. But if we deny him, he will also deny us." So we can think of it this way. If we deny Yahweh or his house, we separate ourselves from his family, and he will no longer recognize us. We will be as strangers to him. In the 7th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 30, verse 84, says, "You made man to be ruler over the works of your hands. That is, those who can make it in your image. Those who will allow themselves to be made in the image of Yahweh." That's the difference in the plan of Yahweh and, of course, this fake plan that the Catholic Church has about ignoring the laws and living any way. Because Yahweh has a special job for us, working with him to restore peace to the universe, he gave us the ability to learn, to repent, and to distinguish between right and wrong, and to be able to make choices. He wants a family who will choose righteousness. Yahweh himself chooses righteousness, and he chooses to live by his laws. And he wants to know that he can trust us to keep his laws willingly. Psalms 4:3 says, "But know that Yahweh sets apart righteous ones for himself. Yahweh will hear us when we call, for we strive to be righteous." So what does it mean to be a part of Yahweh's family? It means that Yahweh chose each and every one of us to be a part of his immediate family. And we have that opportunity right now. We are the biggest part of Yahweh's plan. Yahweh sees within us the ability to be just like him. If we will allow him to finish making us in his image with his character, we will be with no spot nor wrinkle. If we will accept his offer, we can be a part of Yahweh's family forever. Please stand for the next speaker.
Please be seated. Who is your family? Look around. Do you see your family? Do you help your family? Do you assist your family in works that need to be done? Look around. Do you see your family? Do you encourage your family? Do you lift them up when they are down? Who do you think your family is? Your family is the house of Yahweh. We all struggle at times. A kind word or an encouraging word can uplift those around you. It can help yourself to get rid of the negative that you have by turning it into something positive. Believe all that the prophets have spoken. Follow the 10 Commandments. Listen diligently to your counselors. They can help you. Follow what they tell you to do. Greet each other with kindness. One woman told me that it gives her great joy when she gets a hug, just one hug. She is kind and a gentle woman who cares about others. She will lift you up with kind words of encouragement and encourage you to keep the laws of Yahweh. A true friend, a person we can count on. The second book of Israel, chapter 46, verse 111. Lucifer started usurping authority, and the angels followed with her. Yahweh allowed them to completely destroy the earth, where it was uninhabitable, where it was full of misery, hatred, suffering, disease, and ignorance. Then he started from there to build his family, Yahweh's family, which he had planned in the beginning before he allowed the Malachim to take over the earth that we are living in right now. Do you want to be like Lucifer, Satan? We need to learn how to get along with others. We have classes that you can attend to learn what we can do to change the negative in our lives into things, and the negative things that we desire into what Yahweh wants us to be. The second book of Israel, chapter 46, verse 101. Yekechia 28:14. Notice what this says now. Again, with that in mind, when it's speaking of Satan here, who was with Yahweh when mankind was made, and long before that? In fact, when Yahweh's plan was made to bring forth his family that would rule as he rules. Satan had the opportunity to be in Yahweh's kingdom. All she needed to do is submit. All we need to do is submit. Submit to Yahweh and obey him. Hold fast to what Yahweh tells us to do. We need to humble ourselves and submit to Yahweh's laws, statutes, and judgments. The second book of Israel, chapter 46, verse 8. Before that time, Yahweh had it planned to build a family out of flesh like himself. Get that? Planned to build a family out of flesh like himself. Yes, he is flesh. Yahweh is flesh with spirit, being the life. More scriptures are becoming clearer to us on this subject, so we can go back home and do a study on this. Yahweh promised this power. He promised this precious power or rulership to man, not Satan. Satan did not get that power. Satan rejected that power of Yahweh's way. She wanted to be in charge and rule over mankind. Do we rule over our heads, or try to? Or do we respect the ones over us and follow what they tell us? We need to practice Yahweh's laws daily, continuously, and overcome any and all sin that we have in our lives. We can do it. The second book of Israel, chapter 45, verse 28. Yahweh never promised this power or rulership to her, Satan. Let me read this again. Yahweh never promised this power or rulership to her, Satan. He promised it to man. Man, not Satan. He said, I will make man in my image, and he will have rulership. Yeshua was the first to be born into the great family of Yahweh. The first to be born, Yeshua, in the great Yahweh's family. Yahweh and Yeshua is helping us and keeping us and helping us grow. And sometimes we take baby steps in this growth that we are doing. But we can do it. We can make it. We can follow Yahweh's laws. Yahweh's laws are great for us and helps us become what Yahweh wants us to be, not just what we want to be, what Yahweh wants us to be. So Yahweh never promised this power or rulership to her, Satan. He promised it to man. He said, I will make man in my image, and he will have rulership. Yeshua was the first to be born into the great Yahweh family. He was the first to be begotten of Yahweh. Yeshua was the first to be begotten by Yahweh, and the first to be born of Yahweh to actually have this power, the power that one day each of us will get if we keep Yahweh's laws, statutes, and judgments. What did Lucifer, Satan, know? In the second book of Israel, chapter 44, verse 120, Lucifer took this power to herself before mankind was created. So Lucifer took power away before mankind was even created. She left Yahweh before mankind. She didn't follow Yahweh's laws. She didn't follow his statutes and his judgments of what we needed to have the tools to resist sin, to be a part of Yahweh's family. It's so precious and so wonderful to be a part of the house of Yahweh. I've been in the house of Yahweh for a number of years, and I've never regretted 1 minute in this house of Yahweh. I have changed my life because of the house of Yahweh, and I still change my life on a daily basis to see what have I done wrong and what can I do to improve myself. Because if I can improve myself, I can also help my daughter improve herself and all my friends that are here. Because my family is a huge family right now. I thought I came from a small family. No. I came from an unknown number. Everybody who prays for us, everybody who cares about us, everybody who tells us, great job, or you're lacking, and I'm going to show you what you need to do. That's what we need. We need to accept the corrections. Is it easy? No. Do you want to do it? No. Will you do it? Will you try? Will you get with your counselors? Will you ask for help? That is what we need to do. Because none of us should perish. We should all be here together. We need to become a family where Yahweh can tell us, you have obeyed Yahweh and trusted that Yahweh will guide you in the proper path. This is the group of faithful people who trust and obey Yahweh's instructions and guidance. Our scriptures, all the books that Israel wrote, those are our instructions and our guidance. The second book of Israel, chapter 44, verse 47. It is not going to be one person doing this. It is going to be the family of Yahweh doing this. They will judge by Yahweh's judgments because by that time they will have learned to rule as Yahweh rules. Now, that should ring some bells for everyone. The judgments they use, Yekechka says, will be Yahweh's judgments. Yahweh says they are going to go by my judgments. If we obey Yahweh, Yahweh will give us peace and joy. We will be faithful to him, following all that Yahweh has told us to do. You can find what you need in all the books that Yahweh inspired our overseer to teach and guide us into the way of true peace and joy. The second book of Israel, chapter 43, verse 15. Even the Malachim don't have peace at this time. But it is promised to them as well as to us in the sacred scriptures. In his plan from the beginning, he made the promise to himself. He made it to himself, swearing or vowing by his own name. He said, he has brought this promise forth. Now we are in the last generation, and we will soon see the body of Yeshua, the family of Yahweh, brought forth to bring these blessings to all the universe. We have an important job to do. Remember, we are a family in one accord with Yahweh, our Heavenly Father, who guides us to follow all of Yahweh's laws. Remember, we are a family. who works together by obeying Yahweh's laws. Remember, we are a family. Treat each other as family. They can encourage you. They can lift you up. And when you're sad, they can cheer you up. They can guide you and direct you and give you hope. Because hope is the best thing for all of us. We can help encourage one another and help one another. We just need to trust in Yahweh and follow all the laws, statutes, and judgments that Yahweh has written. We have enough books to read and to study to know what we are to do. All we have to do is apply them to our lives. And remember, teach them to your children, no matter how old they are, because they will respect you in the end and be thankful for you for teaching you the laws, statutes, and judgments. With this, I'll give it to the next teacher.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. The title of my speech today is Members of the House of Yahweh. It's taken from Ephesians 2, verse 19, where Shaul reminds us that we are members of the house of Yahweh. But what does that really mean for us? It means we're more than people who gather in the same place. We belong to Yahweh's household, and that should shape the way we live and the way we relate to one another. To help us think about that, let's consider this question. What makes a family a family? Is it living under the same roof? Sharing the same last name? Or looking alike? Well, if looking alike were the requirement, some of us would probably be wondering, how did I end up in this family? The truth is, a family is much more than people who are related by blood. A family is built on love, care, loyalty, and willingness to stand by one another. Now let's think about another family, the Yahweh family. If someone visited our congregation for the very first time and asked, what does it mean to be part of the Yahweh family? What would we say? Would we explain that we keep the Sabbath and how to keep it in the way Yahweh teaches us? Yes, that's true. Would we tell them about Yahweh's feast days and his commandments? Absolutely. But will those things alone explain what it means to be a Yahweh family? Today, I'd like us to discover that being part of the Yahweh family is not only about what we believe, it's also about how we treat one another. And this brings us back to the thought we introduced earlier from Ephesians 2, verse 19, where Shaul reminds us that we are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the house of Yahweh. Let's take a closer look at those words, members of the house of Yahweh. What a beautiful description. Shaul doesn't simply tell us where we belong. He reminds us whose family we belong to. That's a relationship, not just a place. Those words deserve our attention, members of the house of Yahweh. Think about that for a moment. Now, when you hear the word house, what comes to mind? Well, most of us probably picture a building, right? But a house is much more than four walls and a roof. A house becomes a home because of the people in it. It's where we learn, grow, help one another, forgive one another, and patiently support each other. In this same way, Yahweh is building more than a congregation. He is building a what? A family, yes, a family. If we are members of the house of Yahweh, then we aren't strangers sitting side by side. We are brothers and sisters who belong to the same Heavenly Father. That also means we have a responsibility. Every member of a family has a part to play. We encourage, pray for, and look after one another as we help each other grow in Yahweh's way. Isn't that what a family does? Of course, every family has its joys and its challenges. Families are wonderful, but they're also wonderfully interesting. Every family seems to have someone who tells the same story every time everyone gets together. Before they even start, you're already thinking, I know how this ends. And somehow, everyone still politely listens as if it's the first time they heard it. The point is, families aren't perfect because we aren't perfect yet. We're all growing, we're all learning. If Yahweh had waited until we had everything figured out before calling us, this room would probably empty. Thankfully, He calls imperfect people and patiently teaches us day by day. As we grow together, there will be times when our patience, understanding, and kindness toward another are tested. Perhaps someone forgot to greet us. Someone didn't reply to our message right away. And we might think, they must be upset with me. Or they must not like me anymore. It's amazing how quickly our imagination can begin writing a story. Then later we discover they weren't ignoring us. They had simply left their glasses at home and didn't even see us. Or they were trying to remember where they parked and were distracted. I have to admit, I've done this myself a few times. Someone didn't greet me and I started wondering, did I do something wrong? Or did I accidentally offend her? Before I knew it, my imagination had written a whole story. Then later I found out she simply didn't see me. Have you ever done that? Sometimes we can be a little dramatic. Or as we say back home, my Filipino friends will probably relate to this. We become a little OA, overacting. So how often have we been relieved to discover that truth was much, much kinder than the story we imagined? Perhaps that's one reason Yeshua placed such great importance on how we behave each other. As mentioned earlier, I'll just read the verse again. In Yohanan 13, verse 35, by this we all know that you are my disciples, by the love you have for one another. He didn't say people would recognize us because we always have the quickest answers, or because we know the most scriptures. He said they would recognize us by our love. Love is what makes the Yahweh family different. A caring heart chooses patience. It chooses to believe the best about others. It builds others up instead of criticizing. And that brings us to another important question. Why did Yahweh bring us together? Was it simply so we would attend the same services? Or did He have a greater purpose? Let's think about the early believers described in Acts. We don't have much time to read the entire verse, but I encourage you to write down Acts 2, verses 42 to 47, and read it later. Acts tells us what life was like for those early believers. They grew in their faith together. They prayed together. They shared what they had with one another, helped those in need, and live as one family. That's a beautiful picture of the Yahweh family. And even today, we continue to strengthen the family in many different ways. Some people encourage with kind words. Others quietly serve behind the scenes. Some visit those who are sick. Some help clean after everyone has gone home. Some faithfully pray for others without anyone knowing. Not everyone has the same role, but everyone has something valuable to contribute. Think about the human body. Your hands don't argue with your feet about which one is more important, right? At least, I hope you don't. Every part has its purpose. The same is true in Yahweh's family. For your scripture reference, it's found in 1 Corinthians 12, verses 12 to 27. Each one of us has been given opportunities to strengthen someone else's faith. Sometimes it's through a sermon, sometimes it's through a conversation, and sometimes it's through a simple smile, as long as it's a sincere one, not a fake one. Have you ever noticed how a warm smile can brighten someone's whole day? This reminds me of something my high school teacher once told our class. She said, "A smile costs you nothing, but it can give you everything." I don't remember who originally said those words, but I've never forgotten the lesson behind them. A simple smile can encourage someone, brighten their day, and show kindness without costing us anything. But I know sometimes it's hard to smile, right? Especially if you're not feeling well or going through something. But even then, a kind word, a listening ear, or simply letting someone know you're praying for them can mean just as much. So, if someone asks us again, what does it mean to be part of Yahweh's family? I hope our answer wouldn't only come from our words. I hope it would come from the way we treat one another. Because people might forget what we say, but they remember how Yahweh's family made them feel. So, let us continue to build that reflects the love, kindness, and character of our Heavenly Father. Because in the end, the best way to show others what it means to be Yahweh family is to live like one. With that, I'll turn you over to the next teacher.
Shabbat Shalom, great family of Yahweh. Please be seated. So before I jump into my speech, I have a little question for you. What is your goal in the house of Yahweh? Now, I'm not talking about the politically correct answers that we rattle off easily about being a teacher, having peace, health. Have you ever really thought about it, what your goal is? What's that thing that you're holding on to, that thing that you're pushing towards? You know, Pastor was always setting goals. He was always setting goals in his personal life and goals for the house of Yahweh. And pretty much those goals all aligned in one direction. The other thing that I learned from Pastor is to break those goals up into small bite-sized pieces. So, as I'm going over my speech, I want you to think about that. Think about what your goal is. Now, today I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Ephesians chapter 4. And if you have your book of Yahweh, it's found on page 918. And the title of this chapter is Put Off the Old Man, Put on the New Man, Offices in the House of Yahweh, and Yahweh is One. Now, as I'm going over this, there's one goal that Pastor had for the house of Yahweh. One goal that he spoke about consistently over the years. I want to see if you can remember what it is. In verse 1, the Apostle Shaul is saying, I, therefore, the prisoner of Yahweh, plead with you that you walk, that our actions, our talk, the way we live our daily life, is worthy of the call with which we were called.
that we don't take our calling for granted, that we embrace it, that it becomes part of our walk. Continuing on in verse 2, he says, with all lowliness. Now, a lot of these words in here, I got the definitions from Merriam-Webster's, but I kind of wanted to touch on them again, just to remind us of what these words mean. That word lowliness, it means in a humble manner. It means to be teachable. It means to be able to admit when we messed up. It says, and meekness. That word meekness, enduring harm or injury with patience and without resentment. Not being violent, not lashing out at one another, not retaliating, being as Yeshua, who said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They don't realize they stepped on your toe. They don't realize that they didn't wave to you when you were passing them. And that's okay. Continuing on, patience, bearing with one another. That word bearing with. It's something difficult to deal with, to accept, to endure, especially, this is key, especially without succumbing, without falling into that trap that Satan laid. To be worthy of our call that Yahweh called us here. To deserve or allow, to support the weight of, to hold above, to support one another and to hold each other above ourselves, to lift one another up. To move while holding up, to move towards that goal that we all have of becoming that righteous family of Yahweh. And supporting, and to have that as a feature or characteristic in ourselves. Verse 3, endeavoring, which means seriously or continually trying to do something. Do we do that every day? Seriously, continually trying, striving to keep the laws of Yahweh? To work with a set purpose and serious, determined effort. With utmost diligence, that's steady, earnest, and energetic effort. Persistent, careful, hard work. And continuing in verse 3, and zeal to keep the unity of the Spirit, of the law, in the bond of peace. Verse 4, there is one body, one house of Yahweh, one body of believers, one Spirit, the laws of Yahweh, just as you were called in one hope of your calling. Verse 5, one Father, one faith, one baptism into this great family of Yahweh. Verse 6, Yahweh is one and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. So, do you remember yet what Pastor's goal was? What was it? Anybody? Yes, unity. And that brings me back to my title, Yahweh's family, a family in perfect unity. Going on to verse 7 in this chapter, he says, but to each one of us blessings, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and the tests that go along with it to help us perfect and learn how to use that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. We're given according to the measure of the Messiah's gift. That is why he says, when he ascended on high and he led captivity captive and gave gifts or authority to men. So what authority did he give? Well, verse 11 tells us. He gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some preachers of the message of the kingdom of Yahweh, and some pastors and teachers and some receptionists and gardeners and accountants and typesetters and proofreaders, cooks, cleaners, carpenters. The list goes on and on, really. For the building and perfecting of us, of the people of Yahweh. Let's see. Verse 12, for the perfecting of the saints. Remember those qualities in verses 2 and 3 that we went over? Bringing those qualities to perfection in us. For the work of the ministry, for the preaching and the publishing, for the building of the house of Yahweh, which is the body of the Messiah. For perfecting us, so that we can be a part of that family. Verse 13, until we all come to the same unity of the faith and of the same knowledge the Son of Yahweh has, in unity with Yeshua, in unity with Yahweh, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness, the perfection of Messiah. Becoming Yahweh's perfect family. So what are the children of Yahweh not? Verse 14 tells us that. No longer are we to be children tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, by which they lie in wait to deceive. No longer are we deceived because we can rightfully divide the word of truth. We have that knowledge, that wisdom, that understanding, and we are not swayed, nor are we offended by one another. Verse 15, instead, speaking the truth in love, we might grow up in all things unto him who is our head, Messiah. Have you ever noticed how everything Pastor said was in line with or quoting scriptures? Verse 16, from whom the whole body, all these different jobs, all these different positions, being fitly joined and brought together by that which every joint supplies. I'm serving you and you're serving me. And by doing that, we are all taken care of. According to the effective working in the measure of every part, everyone doing their part, no one usurping authority, no one slacking. And that causes the growth of the body because we're no longer struggling against each other like Cain was. We're coming together into that unity. And we do this by first keeping the laws. In the Mark of the Beast, part 2, chapter 17, verse 472, Pastor said, we must learn to be in complete unity with Yahweh and be brothers and sisters to each other, to whom Yahweh is calling out, not just the ones we like. We can learn from everyone whom Yahweh has sent here, even those whom we tend to look down on. We must learn to love Yahweh with all of our hearts and souls and minds. And we must learn to love our neighbors as ourselves. Yahweh called each and every one of us here. It's not for us to judge who Yahweh called here. It is up to us to come into unity with each other and to build up each other, just as Pastor built us up. In verse 546 of that same chapter in Mark of the Beast, Pastor said, those who are resurrected at the end of Yeshua's 1,000-year reign of peace must prove to Yahweh, just as we of the house of Yahweh are having to prove right now that they love Yahweh enough to remain in unity with Yahweh and the brethren. Did you catch that? And the brethren, our brothers and sisters. To resist all temptations Satan can throw our way, to remain in that unity. It's a choice that we have to make. In Philippians chapter 2, it says in verse 1, therefore, if there is any consolation, any comfort, any reassurance in the Messiah, if any comfort in love, if any fellowship in the Spirit, if any affection and mercy. And in verse 2, I want you to imagine that this is Pastor saying to us, complete my joy by being like-minded, having the same love that is found in the laws, being united in one accord, being in agreement, to being consistent in harmony with one another, and of one mind. Let nothing be done by way of strife or empty glory, but in all lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves, lifting each other up. Let everyone look out not only for your own interests, but for the interests of others. And in 2 Kepha 3:14, it says, I'm just going to read the end part, be diligent to be found spotless, blameless, and at peace with him. So again, I ask, what is your goal here in the house of Yahweh? And if you will all please stand and welcome the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. You know, I can't resist because I have to say this. As always, it is an honor and a privilege to stand before the called out ones. We know that today's theme is on the family, what it means to be the Yahweh family. And the title of my portion is, To be the Yahweh's family is to measure ourselves against the standard of perfection. The importance of families cannot be overstated. Father Yahweh created the earth, the universe, everything within it, and he also created the family unit. We're going to find out that the family unit is the cornerstone of his great plan for mankind. Let's begin by turning over to Genesis. We're going to go to chapter 2, verse 7. And Yahweh formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Yahweh planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Let's go over to 18. And Yahweh said, it is not satisfactory that man should be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. Now, the way it's written, you'd almost think, well, Yahweh created Adam, and then as an afterthought, he saw him sitting there lonely underneath a tree and said, oh, you know what? He just looks lonely. Let me think, what can I create to keep him company? Okay? Let's go down a little bit further. We know that Yahweh created Eve for Adam. In verse 24, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and he shall be united to his wives in his own house, and they will therefore be as one family. Now, in biology, the cell is the unit of life, the smallest unit of life. In sociology, the family is the smallest unit of life. And Yahweh created families for the purpose of children. When you think about how is this earth populated, it's with children. So families populate communities, populate the nation, populate the world. The family unit is the cornerstone, as I mentioned before, the cornerstone of the great plan of Yahweh. When you think about what a cornerstone is, it's the first stone laid in the foundation of a building. That first stone, it has to be laid exactly right because it determines the position, the alignment, the integrity of what is being built. Let's think about that. Because the family unit, as Yahweh originally created it, is the cornerstone of his plan for mankind. When we think about that, we have to consider that not only did he set up the family unit, but he also said specifically how it is to be structured. So let's go over to Ephesians 5. And we're going to look at verse 25, 22. Let's start here. Husbands, love your wives, just as the Messiah also loved the called out ones and gave himself for them. Let's go up to 22. Wives, submit to your own husbands, just as to the Messiah. Let's jump down to chapter 6. Children, obey your parents in Yahweh, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. Now, keep in mind that Satan knew Yahweh's plan. She was with him from the foundations of the earth. So what does she do? She tries to destroy the family. Because remember, the family is the cornerstone of his plan for mankind. If we look in chapter 3 of Genesis, it didn't take much either. And it says, for he knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be as gods. Did Yahweh really say you will die if you eat of this? So what did Satan do? She caused doubt. She caused Eve to doubt the teachings of her husband. And she set a division in the family. Think about this. The adversary, her job, her self-imposed job, is to defile everything Yahweh has created, to cause defilement, to cause confusion. And that is what she did in the family. When you consider that because of that, because she set that doubt, violence evolved in the family. Distrust evolved in the family. Jealousy, hostility, anger, murder, war. Isn't that what we have in our world today? Do those characteristics describe what we have now? That's where it started. Yahweh knew that this would occur. It didn't surprise him. Remember, Yahweh has plans within plans. And Yahweh, of course, did not give up on calling the family. He's still calling a family. He's been calling a family for 6,000 years. The family is still the cornerstone of his great plan for mankind. A family not called by blood, but called by spirit. Not called by blood, but called by belief. Called by trust, trusting in him as our creator. That's the family that he is calling now and has been calling for 6,000 years. So through belief, repentance, and conversion, we are being called into the spiritual family of Yahweh. Now, let's go a little bit further. Let's go to Ephesians 1. We're going to go to Ephesians 1. We'll look at verses 4 through 5. Because remember, Yahweh is calling us into this family. Many of us are not related by blood. Some of us, of course, are blessed to have our blood relatives here with us. But many of us too are like Abraham. Leave your country, leave your kin, and come to me. So some of us are here by ourselves. And it says in Ephesians 1, 4 through 5, because he chose us with him before the foundation of the world, that we were to be holy and without blame before him in love, preordaining us to be his children. Adoption through Yeshua Messiah according to the righteous pleasure of his plan. So his plan was to adopt a family of believers that would never forsake him. That is who we are. Let's go a little bit further. Keep in mind that it says, preordaining us to be his children. We are all children in the great house of Yahweh. It doesn't matter how old we are. It doesn't matter our status, our position, how important we might think we are. We are his children. When you look in a family and you consider children and how they behave towards their parents, one of the things I notice as a mother, as a teacher, children like to measure themselves against adults, don't they? Can I have my slide? They measure themselves to make sure that they are growing. They want to see how tall I am. And some would say, I'm up to your ears, or I'm up to your nose now. That's what children do. They measure themselves against their parents. In the great house of Yahweh, Yahweh is our Father. The house of Yahweh is our mother. Because from the house of Yahweh, we learn, we grow. We are measuring ourselves against the standard of perfection, and that is Yahweh. And how do we measure ourselves? What are we measuring for? We have to make sure that we are taller today than we were last week. We have to make sure that we are taller today than we were 10 years ago, or however many years it was since we came through the gate. That's the measurement. And we have to keep in mind two things. Love Yahweh with all your heart, your soul, your might. And the other is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So in keeping that in mind, how are we measuring up with those of the two greatest commandments? We have to make sure, just one of the things, we never hold a grudge against anyone. We have to make sure, and I'm going to purposely focus on just this one thing, keeping in mind that there are many. We have to make sure that we never retaliate against anyone. If someone offends us and we don't talk to that person the next day, we are retaliating. We are holding a grudge. If someone offends us and we don't answer the phone because, oh, she's calling, what does she want? We are holding a grudge. We are retaliating. We have to keep in mind, where did that lead to? How did that affect Yahweh's first family? And I know we don't always think about it, but Cain retaliated against Abel. Abel was righteous. Cain was offended that his brother was more righteous than he. And he retaliated. And it ended in the murder of Abel. So we have to be careful. Now keep in mind that also to be adopted into Yahweh's family comes through baptism. At the time that we are baptized, we are saying, Father Yahweh, here I am, consider me. We are actually appealing to the court in heaven to look at us as a possible member of Yahweh's family. It's through that conversion that we become members of Yahweh's family. So very quickly, let's turn over to Romans 8, found on page 879. We're going to go back to Romans 8, found on page 879, and we are going to read 21. Because the creation itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption into this glorious liberty by the children of Yahweh. Who will deliver all of creation? The children of Yahweh, adopted into Yahweh's great family. That is who we are. The plan began with the family unit as the cornerstone. The plan culminates with Yahweh's adopted family as the cornerstone. Because it's through Yahweh's family that all of creation will be saved. So to keep all of this in mind, a family that Yahweh has taken 6,000 years to carefully select, carefully choose, and we are part of that. All praise goes to Yahweh. And with this, I'll turn it over.
Shabbat Shalom. You can be seated, please. Are we joyous today? All right, are we finding joy in our tests and our trials? Do we find joy in the steadfastness of our mediator, our high priest Yahshua? Do the statutes of Yahweh bring joy to our hearts? Has the fulfilling of prophecy gained us joy? Have we found joy in our work for Yahweh, in that daily grind? And have we found joy in the prophecy fulfilled in Isaiah 44, verse 2? Let's go to google.com and find out what this word really is trying to tell us. Joyous. It means full of joy, showing or causing joy, great joy, exuberant, and deep feeling. Merriam-Webster's dictionary gives us some synonyms. Elated, jubilant, satisfied, blissful, pleased, and thankful. This sounds like Yahweh's giving us a life that's full of abundance. And I'd like to remind you that in Deuteronomy 8, verses 6 through 11, of positive law number 19, which is be thankful to Yahweh in prayer, praise, and deed. And in verse 10 it says, when you have eaten and are satisfied, then you must bless Yahweh your Father for the rich land he has given you. But then he gives us a warning. Beware that you do not forget Yahweh your Father by not keeping his laws, his judgments, and his statutes, which I am giving you this day. For joy is an enduring state of the body, not just your own personal body, but the body of Messiah. And it persists even through hardship, and it connects us through each other. As we were told from the first speaker, any of us, it doesn't matter what the position, it doesn't matter what we can do, what we can't do, it just connects us all because we have the joy of Yahweh. And through the faith, how we walk, how we talk, how we live, and the purpose, which is to take this message of peace to the world and to share it and then to let it continue on through the universe. Now, does this mean that we never get down or sad? No. But we do have a way to overcome that, and that's through our counselors and through the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, and also through studying the law. And to remember that correction, when we are corrected, that is love. That's a hob. And it's for our benefit. And to remember not to think, as Eve did, that the grass seems a little bit greener on the other side of the fence. Because it's not. That's an illusion. It's a pretense of them being joyous. They celebrate their holidays. They celebrate their parties. They have their things that they do that they think brings them joy in the summertime. The biggest one that they've had was celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States and all the things that they did. But in that, what they did was try to bring the joy to them. There's nothing substantial in it. It was a pretense. And they seek it every year, year after year. But it doesn't bring them what they want. And to a lot of them, it brings depression. But Pastor warns us in The Mark of the Beast, Volume 2, Chapter 17, verse 631, that deception is when one allows oneself to be drawn into the belief that he or she can have a joyous life by breaking Yahweh's laws. That's just fulfilling their lust. They're finding that momentary joy in filling their lust, and it's not really joy, because joy is everlasting. Joy makes you feel, as it said, jubilant, satisfied, blissful. And what they're celebrating is nothing more than the fulfillment of their lusts, which is sin, and brings war and death and sickness and disease. And there's nothing in it for them. In the Gematria, we're going to look up what the word joyous means. Can I have the first one, please? All right, here we go. Joyous. In the Hebrew, 1390, it means a hill, a little hill. And if you go to that, it goes to 2022, which means mountain or hill country, promotion. Where have we heard that before? Isaiah 2:2, the mountain of Yahweh. All right, let's go down to the next one. It's the English, 630, which means son of Haman. Now, when I read that, I was like, it's a name. What does a name have to do with anything? But if you go to Hadassah, chapter 9, verses 7 through 13, and read the side notes, G4 and G5, you find that in their death, it was not vengeance or retaliation, but it was a judgment that nothing will interfere with Yahweh's plan and that it will continue on. And then we have the simple 105, which is a basin, which comes from 5592, from 5605, which meant to be a doorkeeper, of which we have lots of doorkeepers. Those doorkeepers that tell us when you come in, when you go out, what's clean, what's unclean. We have a priesthood that guides our steps each and every way. Joy broadens the mind. It improves our heart, because when you have joy, those little electrodes and microbes in you, they just start moving, and then you've got all this energy, and you want to share that energy, and you want to share that positiveness. And it reduces our stress. It is an active force in life and acts as an anchor and an inner strength of hope. So this joy helps to bring about a change in our character. It helps us to see that positive character goes a whole lot farther than anything negative. And as we also have a change in frequency, because joy, which is part of love, part of Ahab, takes that frequency up and it shares with so many more. I'd like to show you our next overhead. All right, in this, I want you to see, it's not a pulling in of joy, but we have the priesthood. We have Yahweh and Yeshua and Yisrael surrounding us, protecting us, giving us that safety. But if you put yourself right in the center and you see that all the things that Yahweh teaches us, to have gratitude, to learn, to have obedience, to pay our tithes and our offerings, to celebrate the Sabbaths and the feasts, to serve however we can, and to Ahab your neighbor, you notice that that goes out. It spreads out from you. You have all of that positive energy, if you stand next to somebody else that has positive energy, that has joy in their life, your little microbes are moving, their little microbes are moving, and pretty soon they're bouncing off of each other, and it continues to go out. So with this, you can see that in Matthew 13, verse 14, the kingdom of Yahweh is like treasure hidden in a field, which when a man has found it, he hides it again, and then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field, because that's how important it is. And we have a purpose. In Matthew 24:14, it says, and this joyous message, do you hear that? The whole universe is waiting for that. Of the message of the kingdom of Yahweh shall be preached in all the world, from the house of Yahweh at Abel by the witness Yisrael, which has been done, for Yahweh will be with him. He will preach this message to all nations, and then the end will come. And that's our purpose, to continue to push forward that message and to be joyful. Remember I asked you, are we joyful because of the prophecy in Isaiah 44 that was fulfilled? It speaks of pastor. It speaks of the two witnesses and all that they will do. And in the third book of Israel, it says he won't be deceived. He was chosen. He was the elect. We are part of that because we are his family. In Galatians 6, verse 4, it says, but let every person carefully test and prove his own work, his deeds and conduct. Then he will have rejoicing in himself alone and not another. We have to improve ourselves first so we can share that joy with others, so it can radiate out, and that message can continue to go. And as the world sees us, and as we see each other, especially during ordinations and things like this, remember 2 Chronicles 9, verse 7. It says, how joyous are your men and women, how joyous are these your officials who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. Continually we stand before Yahweh. We ask for all that he can give us so we can share it, so we can show that joy. And that joy, as in the 11th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 1, verse 4, joy is sharing with the body of believers. It's sharing a cloud in the sky. It's sharing a part in the work that you found joy in that day. It can be sharing a recipe that you found that someone will delight in. So remember to keep pushing forward, and that joy is where we will find a way to continue on. And at this time, I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You can be seated. As being a member in the house of Yahweh, one thing I know that all of us have heard, probably from day one, is to examine ourselves. Examine yourself. Don't worry about the problems that your sister might still be struggling with. Don't worry about, the things, the little things that your family members might be trying to overcome. Examine yourself. I will examine myself. That is being a member in this great house of Yahweh. But then I think of something else that Pastor has told us, that the scriptures implore us to do. Consider one another. Now we're examining ourselves, but we're considering one another. I think about
I just think about back in 2018, I remember when Pastor was saying, I want you to read. Then he said, no, you know what? I want you to study the office and the requirements for the priest of the house of Yahweh. He said, I want you to study that because I really want everybody, to start understanding the job and what is required of the priest of Yahweh. And I thought about that and I was like, well, I won't ever be a priest of Yahweh. But Pastor has told us the women have a great job in Yahweh's house of supporting and uplifting the priest in the house of Yahweh. And how can one support and uplift a job without knowing what that job entails? A great worker under a supervisor knows the ins and outs of the job. If at any moment that supervisor has to call in, they know and have confidence that their worker is going to be able to get that work done in their absence. So I think about that. Study the work of a priest. Well, what is the job of a priest? And I go back to that, examining ourselves and considering one another. And I think about, how the priests bless the people. The priests say, Yahweh, please allow your face to shine upon each and every one of them. They don't say, Yahweh, allow your face to shine upon me. We're thinking about you. They're thinking about us. Yahweh, please keep them in your way. They show the care and concern. And then that brought to my remembrance a conversation that I had with a great friend. This was about 13 years ago, so this must have been, a really heavy conversation. 13 years ago, conversation, and something had just taken place, and the person said, I really deeply grieve for the widow. And, they said how, because it must be truly hard and difficult when a woman loses her husband but has to continue in her walk with Yahweh without her husband. And they said, I truly grieve for the widow. And that stayed with me when that person said that. And they said, I keep the widow in my prayers. And that brings me to the title of my speech today. I have prayed for you. And when I think about those words, and showing that caring concern and thinking about our prayers, it brought to my remembrance Psalm 34, which says, starting in verse 15, the eyes of Yahweh are upon the righteous, and his ears are open unto their cry. Yahweh hears those prayers of the righteous. Yahweh honors the prayers of his saints, his priests. Verse 17, the righteous ones cry out and Yahweh hears them. He delivers them from all their trouble. Yahweh is close to those who have a broken heart. He doesn't say that you can only complete this work if your heart is unbroken. Sometimes he says he has to allow us to hit rock bottom before we can realize and understand that our trust must be in him. Family, the greatest realization that we all can come to is that we must trust in Father Yahweh. One thing that Pastor tried to get over to us is that his trust and his strength came from Father Yahweh. Anything that you think you might struggle with or that you have had to endure, our overseer said, I've done it. I've gone through it. I've endured it. But my strength and my trust is in Father Yahweh. Continue reading in Psalm, it says, Yahweh is close to those who have a broken heart, and he saved those who have a contrite spirit, those who are humble, those who are repentant. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. Many are the afflictions. If you feel like you're going through it, praise Yahweh, because many are the afflictions of the righteous, but Yahweh delivers them from them all. We all carry things, family. Consider that. Yahweh concerns himself with those who take upon his name upon themselves, examining ourselves and considering one another. In the 8th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 19, verse 19, Pastor is talking about denying him. Don't deny me, he said. Don't deny Yahweh. Don't deny Yeshua. Don't deny me. He said, Kepha denied Yeshua. Kepha wasn't converted yet. You are. Yeshua said to Kepha, when you're converted, then strengthen your brethren too. He was showing him, Kepha, I'm praying for you. Satan wants you. But when I was really considering that, I said, you know what? That person who might seem difficult to deal with, Satan is wanting them also. So Yeshua would have prayed for them as well. That person who needs help doing everything because now they are bedridden, Satan wants them too. Yeshua prayed for them. That person who might be a little slower, as a speaker said already, Satan wants them too. The person whose mind is not as sharp as it used to be, Satan wants them also. The person who is struggling and is not as zealous as they used to be, Satan wants them also. But Yeshua said, I have prayed for you, and when you are strengthened, consider all of these. And in Matthew 25, it's the sentence of the righteous ones, starting in verse 34. It says, then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer, saying, Teacher, when did we see you hungry and feed you, and all of these things? Going down to verse 40, and the king will answer and say to them, truly I say to you, when you have considered one another, when you have went to our Father in prayer on behalf of one another, in that day, I will hear your cry, I will feel your love for one another, and I will come and save you. He says, when you did this for one of the least of these, my neighbors, you have done this for me. I keep thinking about how Pastor said in that second book of Israel, you know, one of the greatest things that we struggle with is that we forget. And we're human, we forget. But as a body, as a family, we have to remind one another. It takes each of us reminding one another that we're in this together, not putting one another down, but lifting one another up. Because then will Yeshua come and save us from all these things. Our great and awesome guardian and leader here on this earth, Pastor, he didn't sugarcoat things. He gave it to us straight. And he told us in the 7th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 18, verse 53, he said, the worst part is yet to come. Oh yeah, the worst part was yet to come, because in 2021, he went to sleep. The worst part was yet to come. He said, I don't want to scare you. I don't want you to be scared, family. I want you to put your faith in Yahweh. Yahweh promises, our high priest promises, he has been given power, the powers. And he is, total powers over heaven and earth at this time. And he is our high priest at this time. And he's promised us to get us through this as we do the work. Yeshua is still with us, guiding our mighty priest, helping us to consider one another. In the 8th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 12, verse 24, Pastor says, I'm kind of in the middle there. He says, I don't forget who to pray for. Don't forget who to pray for. You don't have to pray for yourself. I'm praying for you. Don't forget who to pray for. Remember, someone has already prayed for you. If I can have my video.
Our Father in heaven, whose name is Yahweh. This is Israel Hawkins. Father, your last day's witness, coming to you through the great and honorable high priest and king over the house of Yahweh, Yeshua Messiah. We come to you, Father, by his authority, seeking your help, Father, your guidance, your wisdom, your understanding for each and every one of them. Father, make sure that each one understands. Make sure they hear. I know it's their choice. I know it's their choice, and they've got to hear it and see it and understand it. I'm begging you to impress it on them big time. We love you, Father Yahweh. We see your righteousness, and we know it's the only thing that is written that will survive this 7 last plague. We ask these things and we give you thanks in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah, Yahweh. I have you.
Family, listen to his words. He was praying for each and every one of us. If you don't think that man knew that we were going to have to finish this work by ourselves, he knew. But he was preparing us. He was begging Yahweh for us, asking Yahweh to impress it upon us of how serious it is to consider one another. That man watched family go to sleep. He watched family walk out on him. He watched ones that he had brought up and taught for 30 years walk out the gate. He has endured it all. And at the very end, he prayed for us. Family, pray harder. Pray harder, be kinder, consider one another. Psalm 34:22 says, Yahweh redeems the lives of his own servants. Our pastor and overseer is waiting on us. What makes us a family member of Yahweh's is our ahab for one another. And if you will all please stand, I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker.
Please be seated. What you're seeing on the overhead is the partial title of a sermon that our overseer gave on 2/25/2006. The kingdom of priests will bring peace to the universe. In this sermon, our overseer reassured us that despite the miseries and the devastations that are going on in the world, a righteous kingdom of priests is being formed right here in the house of Yahweh. And this kingdom of priests will bring peace to the universe. How could our overseer be so sure, so certain that this kingdom of priests, Yahweh's family, is about to have the authority to teach Yahweh's laws to the entire universe? How could he be so sure? There's something our overseer always did, and there are many who can testify to this. When our overseer is about to speak, when he's on his way to the podium, he would stop at a certain point, kneel down before Father Yahweh, and pray. He would ask Yahweh to speak through him to us. He would present us to Father Yahweh as your people, personalizing us to Father Yahweh. He would ask Yahweh to give him the words to speak, and that Yahweh would bless us with the understanding of the message. He would end his prayer and continue to the podium. So when our overseer stands before us, he knows that he is speaking with the inspiration and the authority of Yahweh, and will only say what Yahweh tells him to say. And that's why he could say to us and the world with much confidence that we will have peace when this kingdom of priests is established. Throughout this sermon, our overseer gave us a breakdown of Yahweh's 6,000-year plan for his family. How Yahweh is guiding the events, showing the results of each time period, how Yahweh has preserved his laws through portions of his family from Abel right down to these last days. On the other hand, overseer shows Satan's kingdom at work, trying to get Yahweh's laws totally out of the world. Satan knows that righteousness by practicing Yahweh's laws brings life. And sin, by breaking Yahweh's laws, brings death. But she wants to deceive mankind to make them think that sin doesn't really cause death. The things that occur to man are just natural. It's not because you're not keeping those old laws. So she glorifies sin through the senses and draws in mankind through the carnal nature. Satan's goal is to stop mankind from practicing Yahweh's laws completely. And Yahweh is allowing her to carry out her schemes. In the meantime, Overseer says, Yahweh is allowing his own family, us, to live this out, to see this suffering and experience it, so we can be a permanent witness of what occurred in each generation, right down to this last generation, of what breaking Yahweh's laws brings. Our next slide shows the first time period of this 6,000-year plan before the flood. Yahweh had his house of Yahweh run by Abel. They all practiced Yahweh's laws. Satan had her house of the gods run by Cain, and they all practiced sin. Both houses grew into huge congregations, and that's when Cain killed Abel. Smite the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. So Cain's congregation was soon wiped out, except for a few. Overseer says, Methuselah and a handful who stayed secluded in Abilene, Galilee. They dared not try to teach Yahweh's laws openly for fear of being killed. So they remained quietly in Abilene, writing down and practicing everything that Abel had taught them. And even after 1,500 years of generation to generation, the laws of Yahweh did not spread outside of Abilene, Galilee. And by then, only 8 righteous individuals remained. Cain's congregation continued to grow. And as the people multiplied, so did the sins of the people multiply. And within that same 1,500-year time period, the whole earth was covered with God worshippers from Cain's teachings. Sin had reached its peak. So, in Genesis chapter 6, Yahweh stepped in and made an assessment. Without a righteous priest, there is nothing to control the carnal nature. So mankind will simply continue in their illegal lusts. Yahweh's judgment then was to allow the consequences of sin to run its course. The defilement from man's sins had reached up into the firmament. The microbes in the firmament were now too sick to control the waters. So down came the waters without any restraint, destroying everything except the 8 righteous ones who Yahweh had preserved. Right here, at the end of this first time period, Yahweh had proved his point. Mankind, without a teacher of the laws, will only practice sin. Sin leads to curses, which leads to death. Our next slide shows the time period after the flood. After the flood, Yahweh started his plan again in the same location, Abilene, Galilee. This time, Yahweh chose Noah. Noah's work was also low scale, but he made the laws available for his followers. Now, at this time, the repopulation of the earth came from just that one family. The only 8 people alive: Noah, his sons, and his sons' wives, as shown in Genesis 10, verse 1. Describing Noah in Genesis 6, verse 8, overseer said, Noah had perfect breeding, almost like Yeshua. The emphasis is on the word almost, which means not quite. Because in the 12th book of Israel, part 1, chapter 14, verse 25, overseer explained that Noah had some tainted genes in him, and he brought down those genes into his generations. So we see that from Noah, righteous ones came forth, as well as unrighteous ones. In the 18th book of Israel, chapter 18, verse 91, overseer says, after the flood, Yahweh started taking the ones who would follow righteousness, and he put within that generation the breeding of his son, Yeshua Messiah. And that's why Yahweh picked Abraham. From Abraham, Yahweh continued to choose righteous teachers who kept his laws before the people. And that's how he protected the bloodline of Yeshua. People like Moshe, who he gave the written 10 commandments of the 613 laws for the people. The righteous breeding continued right down to Malachi. Yahweh didn't choose another teacher after Malachi for about 400 years. But within that 400 years, the preserved ones, Yahweh's family, kept writing down and practicing Yahweh's laws. Then after that 400 years, Yahweh brought forth his perfect teacher, Yeshua Messiah. With that 400 years included, overseer says, it took almost 2,000 years of guarding and keeping to bring forth this perfect man, Yeshua Messiah. And that's exactly what Yahweh is doing for us today, his family. Guarding and keeping us, preserving us for this last portion of his priesthood. After Yeshua was killed, the disciples went back to Abilene, and that's where they wrote down all of Yeshua's teachings. When they had finished their work, which is what we have as volume 2 of the sacred scriptures today, the Nimrod system killed them, and the house of Yahweh stopped again. From Noah also came forth Cush, obviously with the unrighteous genes from Noah. And he brought back the Nimrod system that they had before the flood, spreading the beastly system practices throughout the whole earth, and eventually setting up headquarters in Rome. Our next slide overhead shows this last time period that we are in right now. Now we see the two systems in full force. After Yeshua and his apostles were murdered, the beastly system ruled the world for almost 2,000 years without a teacher of righteousness. They manipulated the 10 Commandments, murdered the majority of the Sabbath keepers, convinced the world that Yahweh's laws were done away with, as prophesied they would do in Daniel 7, verse 25. They had full control of all the religions of the world, right down to this last generation, us. And we all know this last generation began when? 1933-34. This last house of Yahweh was established in 1983. And the book of Yahweh, with Yahweh's 613 laws, was made available to the whole world in 1987. All in this last generation, when Yahweh says, no longer will his laws be kept hidden. This last house of Yahweh, guided by this last able Israel Hawkins, will teach Yahweh's 613 laws from Abilene, Texas, to the whole world. And no one, no power on earth can stop us. And when this last Abel takes his prophesied rest, the sheep will not scatter. High priest Yeshua, the body of priests, and the body of believers will continue teaching Yahweh's 613 laws throughout the entire earth. Now, everyone will see the difference between righteousness and evil. The beastly system continues to cripple the world with the curses of sin. All the sins of illegal lusts found in Leviticus chapter 18 are now being fully practiced throughout the world today. Things that Yahweh says, do not do, Satan says, do. These sins have caused so much confusion to the minds of the people. Now we have each nation thinking they can outdo the other, destroy everyone except themselves. But Isaiah 24, Matthew 24, Revelation 6, Revelation 9. These scriptures prophesy that all lawbreakers will perish. While all of that is going on in the world around us, Yahweh is showing the Ilya, the strength of his laws to turn our hearts to righteousness. Right now, we are all being trained to become teachers of these very laws for the 2 billion coming, as well as for the entire universe. For sure, we can all agree with Father Yahweh, because without our teacher of righteousness, Israel Hawkins, we would not be here today. Again, Yahweh is proving what he said in Genesis chapter 6. Mankind will not practice his laws without a righteous priest to guide them. Our overseer's words are the same as Yahweh's. Overseer says, you can't make it without the priest, brethren. You wouldn't even have a house of Yahweh without the priest. And if you buck up against the priest, Yahweh shows there is a death sentence to do so. The plan of Yahweh is about to be completed. Yahweh has spent almost 6,000 years patiently allowing Satan to prove what he already knew, what he already told Adam and Eve from the very beginning, that his laws, Yahweh's laws, are fair, just, and perfectly righteous. They will not bring hurt nor harm to oneself or none of Yahweh's creation. And that's why our overseer, who knew the plan of Yahweh from beginning to end, who knew that Yahweh's family would be the strict teachers of these 613 laws, who knew that these 613 laws of Yahweh are the laws of peace? That's why our overseer could boldly say, the kingdom of priests, Yahweh's family, will bring peace to the universe. Praise Yahweh. Yahweh, bless your understanding. And I'll now turn the services over to the body of priests. Please stand.
Let's lift our hands in prayer in reference to Father Yahweh. Yahweh Almighty, this is Kohan Kanal Hawkins, together with your people, Father Yahweh, here in the sanctuary and throughout the entire earth, Father Yahweh, being a seed of your great anointed servant Yisrael, and by and through the authority of Yeshua Messiah, being in unity with the body of priests in the great house of Yahweh, we do bless you and thank you, Father Yahweh, for all that you provided unto us. Please strengthen us physically, spiritually, and mentally, continuously to take joy and to rejoice in all of your righteousness. We pray, Father Yahweh, in unity that you would heal us of all of the afflictions of Egypt, that you would see to the needs of your people, that you would continually oversee and guard this great work of your house, especially as we prepare for the great feast of trumpets and atonement, and of course tabernacles and the last great day. Please help us to continually rehearse the words and the teachings of your anointed servant Yeshua throughout this day and throughout this upcoming week as we prepare for the following Sabbath. And in everything that is done, Father Yahweh, that it be to your glory and your praise. We ask and pray for all of the physical and the spiritual food, clothing, and shelter that you provide unto us this day, and that you would cleanse it of all of man's impurities and grant us the permission to partake and make use of all things. Again, Father Yahweh, we just bless you and thank you and praise you for everything. All in Yeshua's name we pray, being a seed anointed servant, Yisrael, being guided by your Spirit. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh.